we are going to learn out of this session is how to operate a ventilator, of mechanical ventilation, how to operate a ventilator, and what are the dynamics, what you want to see exactly by ventilating patient, and how you see that the outcome of a patient. But advanced ventilation, I am not going to talk because this is beyond the scope of this session. So that's very close you need to understand. Then there are a few finer aspects of ventilation like basics of mechanical ventilation. So this is the trauma center and the unit of police and working. I got a team of 26 consultants along with senior agents and junior agents, and they are running almost 100 unit this institution. And this is the building of Ranchi or Ranchi. Now, the first four things which we must understand before going to the basics understanding is that respiratory mechanics. What is the respiratory mechanics? We try to understand. The second thing is what are the modes of ventilation? Because many people are very much interested in mode catheter, mode cases, what kind of mode should we choose for different kind of patients? Then the third one is basics. So that is very important. Unless you do the basic trainings, it will be difficult for you to make advanced settings also. And the fourth important thing is alarms. You need to understand about the different types of alarms which ventilator is keep. Like now, this ventilator is alarming because it has got no oxygen supply. In this auditorium, we do not have oxygen supply. That's why this ventilator is looking at one practical. You cannot stop that. But that is the good part, and that's the safety measure which every ventilator has got. Okay? So, what is mechanical ventilation? You have to understand when you are talking about mechanical ventilation is that you are trying to connect a non-living object with a living object. And what you expect that the non-living object will work as per the need of the living object. You have to understand because this is very important. So when you are connecting a non-living object to a living object, the demand of living object has to be fulfilled by this non-living object. And the type of setting which you do on this non-living object will actually take care of that living object. Means a human being is breathing, he may breathe at a higher rate, at a lower rate, or whatever alternate rate it is. The ventilator has to adjust. If these two things doesn't synchronize properly, then there will be a very high level of AC and that will go on increasing the work of breathing of that patient, and finally that patient will get exhausted, and ultimately the outcome is going to be the patient may die. So that is why understanding this, that is patient ventilator synchrony, is also very important whenever you are patient on ventilator. It's not that just you are connecting a patient on ventilator and you presume that I have done my job. No, that is just 1% of your job. The rest 99% stays when you are working with a ventilator and the patient is in place, and that's a very, very tedious and a very intelligent job which actually needs to do. So, mechanical ventilation is a method to mechanically assist or replace spontaneous breathing. No, patient was breathing, may or may not be breathing at that point of time. Patients cannot do so on their own. That means the patient is not capable of doing so on his own. So that is what you are trying to give an artificial breath to a machine. And that is a machine which doesn't know, it does not have a brain, it does not have a mind, it cannot think. The thick tank is provided actually by you by the setting which you do on the ventilator. So the main form of mechanical ventilation which we do nowadays are the positive pressure. So most of the ventilator which we have, almost 100% worldwide, which we are using is a positive pressure ventilation. There was an era long back, 200 years back, when there was a cholera epidemic for 100 years around. Initially, the starting was with a negative pressure ventilation. That means the patient used to be kept inside a tank and it used to lift the chest like this, chest and abdomen, like this, and the patient used to get ventilated from outside. Chamber used to create a negative pressure and that used to be ventilation. But now gone are those eras. But I hope that in future again the thing is going to come back. I do not know, but it may come back sometimes later on this technology. And hopefully in another 10-15 years, Israelis may come with a negative pressure ventilation from India. So what we talk here, only our concern is positive pressure because our ventilators are all made for giving positive pressure ventilation. Okay. So where to use
विदाउट माइक ट्राई करें क्या? विदाउट माइक ट्राई करें क्या?
Then the another question which comes is where to use this mechanical ventilation.
Okay? 1 second.
Where to use this mechanical ventilation? So if you look at the text, our textbook, there are number of indications which is written in the book, but for the sake of understanding on the bedside and when you are there with the patient, you can understand it in a different way to say that, okay, there may be, because respirator or a ventilator takes care of what? It takes care of the respiratory system. So first of all, we have to think about the problems which arises because of the respiratory system. And the respiratory system consists of what? There's got a lung parenchyma, which is covered by parietal pleura, over which there are intercostal muscles, intercostal bone, then diaphragm, then interskeletal muscles. So all those things are involved in a respiratory system. So any defect which occurs either in the lung parenchyma or in the pleura or in the intercostal muscle or in the rib cage, diaphragm, or in the nervous system is doesn't work. So these are the system. So we provide ventilation in all those situations where the respiratory system is directly compromised. Then there are other indications which are related to other organs like cardiovascular system. A patient who is having with heart failure, he requires mechanical ventilation because his lungs got congested because of heart failure. A patient coming with head trauma, he's unconscious, not able to take care of his own respiratory tract. What do you do? So you intubate the patient. Why? Because you know that if I don't intubate, this patient will get aspirated. And these aspirated things will again cause a problem to the lungs. So there are many indications which are related to nervous system, cardiovascular system. Then there are indications of after surgery, during surgery, because nowadays 100% of general anesthesia cases are conducted under mechanical ventilation in the operation theater. So if you look, there are hundreds of such indications. If you go on counting one after another, so many conditions, all which are there, all are indications for. Here are some of those which have been mentioned here. So you can decide on your own whether this patient requires mechanical ventilation or not. Now, the next question is why to use mechanical ventilation? The basic purpose of mechanical ventilation is to ensure adequate ventilation and oxygenation. That means the patient is taking adequate tidal volume
to maintain his minute volume, and he is getting appropriate amount of oxygen which is going inside his body. So this is the basic purpose of providing mechanical ventilation. Now, the second thing is how to achieve adequacy. How will you measure that? And what do we call as adequate? We call adequate ventilation and oxygenation. And what is adequate? Achieving an adequacy, it is basically the simplest way to check adequacy of mechanical ventilation is to keep the blood gases normal. So blood gases actually reflects whether the patient is getting ventilated appropriately or not. If the blood gas is normal after ventilation, you have to think that yes, your ventilatory strategy is perfect. If the blood gas is not normal, then there is some problem with your mechanical ventilation. As far as oxygenation and ventilation is concerned, not about acid-base abnormalities, but carbon dioxide and oxygen and pH, these three things you have to see whether they are getting corrected when you are ventilating a patient or not. So, if you have a ventilator in your institute, the most important thing is that you must have a blood gas machine. If you have a ventilator in your institute and if you do not have a blood gas machine, then you are not doing justice with your patient. So remember, you must have a blood gas machine when you have mechanical ventilators in your institute, because it will be totally blind what you are doing, you do not know, and your patient may get harmed out of your efforts, what you are doing. So, what makes a blood gas? The next question comes, because we said the blood gas actually is the measurement of ventilation. It says whether you are ventilating properly or not. So what makes a blood gas? So there are mainly three components. One is pH, that is the hydrogen ion concentration. The second is PCO2, that is partial pressure of carbon dioxide, and PO2, that is the partial pressure of oxygen. And the most commonly what we measure, oxygen saturation, or you can say oxygen content. But PO2, why PO2? Because the gases which is given by the ventilator goes through the lung under pressure. So if it is going under pressure, it has to take care of the partial pressure, because it is going in pressure. So we measure the partial pressure of oxygen inside the blood. We measure the partial pressure of carbon dioxide inside the blood. So that is why PCO2 and PO2. And the control of pH and PCO2 you can manipulate by manipulating the minute ventilation or by changing the respiratory rate and tidal volume. Whereas the control of partial pressure of oxygen you can always manipulate by increasing the FiO2, or you can adjust the P, or by to increase the if your patient is in pressure control ventilation, then peak inspiratory pressure, that also you can increase. So peak inspiratory pressure, P and FiO2. So these three things are the main regulatory factors for deciding the partial pressure of oxygen. And for PCO2 also, as I said, it is the minute ventilation as well as respiratory rate. Okay. Now, the next question is, what is respiratory mechanics? As I said in the beginning, because if you are using a mechanical ventilator, you have to understand the respiratory mechanics of a patient, because this mechanics are going to get changed with the mechanics of the ventilation. So if the mechanics of ventilation synchronizes with the mechanics of lung, then only the patient is going to be comfortable. If the mechanics of patient differ from the mechanics of ventilation, then definitely it is going to harm the patient. So we have to understand the mechanics of the lung also. So mechanic is basically a Greek terminology, and it is the branch of physics which is concerned with behavior of physical bodies when subjected to force or displacement. So here the force and displacement is created by what? It is created by ventilator and the subsequent effect of the bodies on the environment. So what is happening after this force and displacement is created by the mechanics of ventilator on the patient. That is how what we are going to see here. So breathing in or inhaling is usually an active movement, we all know. And the contraction of diaphragm muscle causes a pressure variation, which is equal to the pressure caused by the elastic or restrictive component of the respirator. So when we are breathing, it is an active process. We take our breath, it consumes some amount of energy. But when we exhale, it is basically a elastic recoil of the lung, and it is a passive process. We don't need any active energy or source to exhale. That also you have to understand when we talk about mechanics. Okay. Then why do we need to understand respiratory mechanics? Because unless you understand the respiratory mechanics, it will be very difficult to you to do the ventilator setting, because it will be reflected in the graphical manner on the ventilator. And unless you understand the mechanics, it will be very difficult for you to set the ventilator properly for the right patient. So, to understand the pathophysiology of disease underlying acute respiratory failure, it may be the COPD patient. They require a different kind of ventilation. Bronchial asthma, they require a different kind of mechanics. Then to assess the status or progress of the disease, when you are ventilating a patient, whether he is improving or deteriorating, how you will understand? If you understand the mechanics, then only you can decide, or you can understand whether this patient is improving or deteriorating. And then to provide guidelines for therapeutic measures, like whether you need to increase something like peak, whether you need to give some bronchodilator, how you are going to understand. This is how. Whether the patient needs some extra amount of fluid, that is also very important to improve the patient-ventilator interaction. As I said, if you do not understand the mechanics, the patient will breathe on his own and the ventilator will continue his breathe on his own. So there will be a total disharmony between the patient and the machine to prevent the ventilator-related complication. And this disharmony or this asynchronous movement can give rise to a lot of harmful effects to the patient. To plan the discontinuation of mechanical ventilation. So if your mission is successful, if you have ventilated a patient successfully, which you have come to know by learning this lung mechanics, that means your patient is now fit for winning. Now you are ready to win the patient, and you can decide how I am going to take out this patient from mechanical ventilation. So all those things you come to know by understanding lung mechanics. Now, how respiratory mechanics can be measured? So as I said, mechanics, okay. And mechanics, what is mechanics? I said, how you are going to measure this mechanics? That is again a very important question. So in dynamic condition, and it is measured in two forms. One is in dynamic condition. That means when the ventilator is giving its breath constantly and you are monitoring and what is happening in the lungs. So the static measurement and dynamic measurement. So in dynamic condition and static condition, both are important for giving and providing an adequate ventilation to any patient. So what components actually makes this respiratory mechanics? So there are two components. One is compliance and another is resistance. So these are the two most important things we need to understand. Why? Because these are the two things which actually determines the lung mechanics of any person. What will happen if your tube, your trachea size is 10 centimeter width, and if you put an endotracheal tube which is 5 centimeter of width, do you think that you will be able to breathe properly? No, because your trachea is 10 centimeter and you are giving a breathe with a 5 centimeter of tube. So it will become very difficult for the patient to maintain his own tidal volume. It will become very difficult for the patient to maintain his own minute volume. Ultimately, what will happen? The patient will become fatigued and his work of breathing will go on increasing and ultimately he will collapse. So compliance and resistance are the two factors which we need to measure in the form of respiratory mechanics. Now, ventilator provide analog waveform and digital numeric output record. As I said, compliance and resistance. Now again, it comes to how you're going to see this compliance and how you're going to measure this resistance. That will come, that is what we are coming. Either looking at the waveform, if you are an expert, if you can see the waveforms properly, because these waveforms, they are actually the mirror image of respiratory mechanics. Like ECG, when you talk about heart, it is the ECG which tells us about how the heart is functioning. Similarly, it is the graphical representation of the lung parenchyma, what is happening inside the lungs. It is represented in the graphical manner, and we have to understand and catch from it what problem is happening with the compliance and resistance of this patient. These are reflected in the numerical manner also after getting it measured to whatever component we are seeing. Now, so it may be in the waveform, we can see in the waveform manner or a numerical manner. Now, as I said, these graphics you have to understand, because this is very important. Unless you understand the graphics, again, as I said, you are playing on a blind game. You don't know what you are doing. So another thing which I want to say, that whenever you purchase a ventilator, it must have a proper graphical display on it. If it does not have a proper graphical display, I will always say that don't purchase that ventilator. It is useless. You will never come to know whether your patient is getting a benefit out of that or is getting harm, or she is getting harm. So, important thing which is required when you purchase a ventilator. So, along with ventilator, a proper graphical display, and as I said, arterial blood gas measurement. So, ABG measurement is also very important. Now, what are the things which we see? As I said, to measure the mechanics, the things which we see is in the form of either scalars or loops. So, in scalars, what is scalar first of all? So, ventilator, when we ventilate a patient, there are three important variables. One is flow, another is pressure, and the third is volume. So, when these variables are drawn against time, we call it as a scalar. So, if it is flow drawn against time, we call it as a flow time graph. Flow time graph. When the pressure is drawn against time, we call it as a pressure time graph. When the volume is drawn against time, we call it as a volume time graph. So these are the three scalars, and they are very important measurement when we ventilate a patient. Then comes the loops, the most important to understand the complexity. When you go out for a high advanced ventilation, then loops are very important. So one is pressure volume loop, another is flow volume loop. So pressure volume loop means what you have done, you have combined one variable with another variable. So when you draw a graph consisting of two variables, then we call it as a loop. So loops may be either pressure volume, or you can see that flow has been drawn against volume. So pressure volume loop or a flow volume loop. Again, these two are very important as far as understanding of compliance and resistance, or you can say to understand the lung mechanics. These two are very, very important. Now we go to the next slide. So flow time graph as just an example. What are the things which it tells? So if you are measuring flow time graph, it tells about inadequate flow, different flow patterns, airway obstruction, active exhalation, air trapping, all these things. Now, I'm not going to the detail because it will take another another 1 hour to make you understand. But I'm telling you, I'll one by one I'll tell you about we'll go from the simplest part, spontaneous breath, and finally to the high end of mechanical breath, how we give. So first of all, you see how this graphical representation comes when we give a breath in a spontaneous mode. So this is a spontaneous breath. That means the patient is breathing on its own, and you have connected the ventilator, and you look at the graph which is coming on, and this is a scalar flow time graph. As I said, when one variable is drawn against time, it is a scalar. So one scalar is flow time, and flow time tells us about the volume and time basically which you get exchanged in each breath of the patient. So when a patient is breathing spontaneously, this is how it looks. This is the inspiration and this is the expiration. This is the inspiration, this is the expiration. Okay. So you have to just see how the breathing pattern and the loops or the graph is looking like. Okay. And when you are giving a mechanical breath through a ventilator, how does it look? Here, look at this. The upper part, it was in a sine wave pattern. Now it has changed to a square wave pattern. So you have given a breath through a ventilator. That means that is an artificial breath. Initially, it was a spontaneous patient's own natural breath, and this is an artificial breath. So that is why it is coming in a square form. And this is the exhalation, which is again at the opposite end of the graph, at the bottom end. So inspiration comes in a square wave pattern when the patient is given an additional breath. When we compare a mechanical breath with a spontaneous breath, you can see it looks like this. This is the first one is the mechanical breath, and the second one is a spontaneous breath. Okay, so yeah, so this is what the graph is complete now. So first one is a mechanical. So if you get a graph and you see that what kind of thing is coming on the ventilator, you can always determine whether this is being given by the ventilator or the patient is taking on his own. You can always determine by seeing these graphs. Okay. Now flow patterns, because that actually determines how the patient is going to get his breath. These are the different flow patterns on which a ventilator works. The first one, as I said, square wave pattern. Square wave pattern, when you are delivering a patient with a volume control ventilator. Then the another one is a decelerating pattern. When you give a ventilation through pressure control mode, it comes in a decelerating pattern. This is the on pressure control mode. The accelerating pattern, it is not being used because it was used previously, but nowadays nobody uses it because it has got a high chance of causing barotrauma. And the sine wave pattern, just now I have shown that sine wave patterns, why it happens? It happens because the patient is breathing spontaneously. Now, scalars, we have talked. Now we'll talk about loops. So this is as I said, when two variables are drawn against each other, that creates a loop. The pressure and volume has been created against each other, and this is creating a loop that is called pressure volume loop. This side is the pressure and this side is the volume. From here, the breathing has started. This is the inspiratory curve and this is the expiratory curve. So patient has given breath to this side, and from here the breath is coming out. And you can see there are two deflection points. One is here and another is here. This is the point where actually the alveoli opens, and this is the point where actually alveoli closes. So you can see the opening pressure of alveoli through this graph and the closing pressure of alveoli through this graph. So this graph is a very important graph to tell you about the pressure volume changes which is happening inside the lung. The another one is the flow volume loop, and this is again two variables drawn against each other. Flow has been drawn against volume, and both of these are creating a loop. And what it tells, there are two important things. One is peak inspiratory flow rate. That is very, very important. When you are ventilating a patient, you must understand the peak inspiratory flow rate. Like me, as a normal human being, or who has got an approximate minute volume of 5 to 8 liters per minute, if you calculate the peak inspiratory flow rate, it comes to around 25 to 30. Amount of flow has to be there when you are setting a ventilator. So if the peak inspiratory flow is less, then obviously the patient is going to distress and his demands will increase. So if you put a patient on ventilator and if you are looking at this graph, these graphs tell you about the how much is the peak inspiratory flow rate which is actually required for this patient. So this is the inspiratory curve and this is the expiratory curve. The upper part tells you about the peak inspiratory flow rate and the lower part tells you about the peak expiratory flow rate. And this is the point where exactly represents the functional residual capacity. We'll talk about this sometime later. Now, so I talked to you about the scalars, pressure time, flow time, volume time, and I told you about the two loops, the two important loops which is normally used. One is a pressure volume loop and another is flow volume loop. Now, as we are talking about lung mechanics, now we'll go to the main core again. We'll try to understand how the lung mechanics work. Now, this is a lung compliance changes and pressure volume loop. So, suppose a patient has been put on a pressure targeted ventilation. That means pressure controlled ventilation. And pressure control means you have got the right to set the highest pressure to which the ventilator can give its breath. So suppose you have set a peak inspiratory pressure of 20. So it will come here. This is the line which you have drawn. The peak inspiratory pressure of 20. Now, suppose the patient has got a resistant lung. Resistant lung. It will not accept any further volume, whatever pressure you have set, it is not ready to accept after a limit of volume which you are giving. So what happens? This is the volume graph. You can see this green one is normal. This green one is normal. But because this patient cannot accommodate so much of volume, what is happening? The amount of volume which is getting delivered into this lung is less. So the graph comes like this on ventilator. So when you see a patient whose graph is bending down, that means from volume side it is coming down. That means the patient has got a resistive lung. He is not going to accept the volume beyond what it has already decided. So whatever volume we give, it will go down and down. Then another important thing is if the patient's lung is more compliant, okay, like a lung of COPD, and this lung is more compliant. So in that situation, what will happen? At 20 centimeter of water, the pressure which you have targeted, at 20 centimeter of water which you have targeted, at this point of time, what will happen? This is the normal volume. It will give a larger volume as compared to what you have set. So from this normal volume, it will go to a higher volume. That means you can see the VT side is increasing. So with the same amount of pressure, a patient who has got a resistive lung or whose lungs are stiff, the delivery of volume is less. But if the lungs are not stiff, it is more compliant. It will get more volume. It will accommodate more volume. So this is the importance of mechanics when you try to understand mechanics through graphics. So I am trying to make you understand mechanics. Just now I have shown that how the compliance changes when the pressure is fixed. Now I will show you another graph. What we are doing is that we are fixing the volume. Okay, so this is another graph where we are fixing the In the last graph, what we have done, we fix the pressure. Here, what we are doing is that we are fixing the volume. That means this is the commonest thing which we do. Okay, set the ventilator. I set a tidal volume of 500. Now you have set a tidal volume of 500. And this is what has been shown. You have fixed the tidal volume at 500 ml. Now what is happening in two different kind of lungs? One, where the lung is not ready to accept extra volume, and in other situation where the lung is ready to accept extra volume. Now, in these two situations, again you see what is happening. This is the green one. It's shown as that normal pressure. It is generating a normal pressure. When the lung is stiff, what will happen? The curve will get deviated towards higher pressure. That means it is bending on the right side, and it is creating higher pressure. So at 500 ml of tidal volume, one person whose lungs is very stiff is going to generate a pressure of 40, whereas a patient whose lungs is compliant, 15 or 20. Okay, your set pressure is 25. It's just 15 when the lung is compliant, and the lung is stiff, it is generating a pressure of 40. So that is why you have to understand. This is the compliance. How you try to understand on the bedside by looking at the screen. So both of these are abnormal, because this is the normal curve we try to gain. Okay. The next is where compliance, how to look at the compliance through one graph. Although you can check it with other graphs also. Now I will be showing you how to check airway resistance through this graph. Okay, this is a flow volume loop. Okay, so what is happening? Increase airway resistance. Here, the inspiration, the peak inspirative flow is fine. Because of airway resistance, the patient is not able to exhale his amount of volume which is there inside the lung. So what is happening? This is the actual loop which should have come from, but it is developing a loop which is much shortened normal loop. That means the patient has not been able to take out the amount of volume or amount of air which was there inside him. So, and it gives rise to a picture, and that is called a scooped out pattern. So, if you get a scooped out pattern in flow volume loop in any patient when you are putting a mechanical ventilation in a flow volume loop, you have to understand that this patient's airway resistance is high. Okay. Now we go to the next graph. Again, we try to see the airway resistance through pressure volume loop. This is another one. What will happen? In the pressure volume loop, this side is the volume and this side is the pressure. Okay. Here you see this is the normal slope, and as because of high pressure, because resistance is high, this graph is reclining towards right side. So what it's showing, that there is a pressure inside the lung, so it is getting reclined in the right side. So this is how we can see the airway resistance, increasing airway resistance in a lung whose its resistance inside the lung is high. Now we talk about. So I hope that all of you must have understood how to see lung compliance and how to see lung resistance when you approach to ventilatory graphics. Because that is the way and see, that is the only best way to check whether the patient's compliances are normal or not, his resistance is normal or not. Because unless you see the graphics, you will not be able to understand the finer aspects of compliance and resistance. You can always go through and see these through other graphics also. We'll tell you one by one, we'll go through different conditions and then I'll let you know how it happens. Now, when we talk about type of ventilation, now there are two basic types of ventilation. One is volume control, another is pressure control. Now, in volume control, what are the knobs which you set? Rate, feed, FiO2, inspiratory time, and tidal volume. And here in pressure control, what you set? The rate, feed, FiO2, inspiratory time, and peak inspiratory pressure. So the only difference is that in pressure control, you target the pressure, and in volume control, you target the volume. To give the volume, whether the amount of volume the pressure is okay or not. So this is the difference. Now, the another important thing is what are the advantages and disadvantages. Many a time they say, yeah, volume control is not good. Somebody says, oh, pressure control is not good. But as such, if you see, both are good in some manner, both are bad in some manner. But we have to identify. We as a consultant, we are as an intensivist, we need to identify which mode, volume control or pressure control, which one is going to fit into this particular patient or whichever patient you are dealing. So relative advantages and disadvantages. Here you know the tidal volume which you are giving. Here, because your pressure is fixed and the patient has got a speech lung, you do not know how much tidal volume is getting. And even if the patient's lung is compliant, you do not know how much tidal volume is getting delivered unless you have a graphic. So as I said, graphics are the mirror image of what is happening to the lung parenchyma. Then always increase the volume, there are chances of barotrauma, and if you limit the pressure, there are very less chances of barotrauma. That is again very important. Now, volume control ventilation. What the things which you need to see? As I said, that blood gas is the thing which we exactly measure whether your patient is getting ventilated or not. So, with the blood gas, if you are ventilating your patient with a volume control ventilation, how to control the pH and PCO2? If the pH has gone to the alkalotic side, the pH has gone to the acidotic side, your carbon dioxide level is gone up to 55, 60. How you are going to control? So you can control it by changing the respiratory rate and tidal volume. And your oxygen level, how you can control? By increasing the FiO2, PEEP, or indirectly you can increase the peak inspiratory pressure. That's how you can increase the oxygen level inside the patient's body. So this is about volume control ventilation. And this is here, if you look at this graph, these are the three scalars, as I said. One, this is a flow time scalar, this is a pressure time scalar, and this is a volume time scalar. Whenever ventilation. Now, if I say that these graphics are there, tell me whether it is a volume control ventilation or a pressure control ventilation. Now, if it is a volume control ventilation, what will happen? This flow time will show a fixed volume here. You can see that volume is fixed. The top end of this and this is same. But one thing which may vary, because your volume is fixed, the pressure will vary. So you can see in this graph, in pressure time, this is a higher, showing at a higher pressure, and this graph, it is shown at a. So that although you have fixed the volume, the pressure is variable. That means at one time volume, at one time it is delivering 400 ml, another time it is delivering 300 ml. So this is the difference. Or if you have set the volume, here the volume has been set. So one time the pressure is reaching up to 35, another time it is reaching up to 25. So this is the difference. How you can say that, okay, this is a volume ventilation. Now similarly, if we go for pressure control ventilation, and here again you need to control the pH and PCO2 of the patient, whether it is acidotic or alkalotic, through respiratory mechanics. And what you need to do is that you need to change again the respiratory rate and tidal volume. That tidal volume is managed indirectly. So pH and PCO2 basically by respiratory rate, the minute volume is very important that you have to. For controlling the PO2, again what you need is FiO2, PEEP, and in addition controlling the peak inspiratory pressure, how much is going. So that's how you can increase the oxygen level. So then before this, in volume control, you saw a graph, and again, I'm putting a graph. This is a pressure control ventilation. Now, here, what is happening is that this is a flow time graph, and this is a pressure time graph. In pressure time, what you see, because pressure is fixed, there is no change in this pressure time scalar. There is no change in the pressure. But flow time is variable. In this, the patient is getting 500 ml. In this, the patient is getting 300. Again, 500, 300. So, because you have fixed the pressure, the volume is getting variable. So, this is how you can always differentiate whether your patient is on a pressure control ventilation or a flow control ventilation. Now, what are the different modes of ventilation? One is spontaneous mode, all of you know. And in spontaneous mode, what we do, we keep the patient on spontaneous, either on pressure support or CPAP, and then volume targeted modes and pressure targeted modes. Again, we talked about volume control, pressure control. Again, what are the modes we'll be talking about? This is very important. So in a spontaneous, we have a spontaneous breath, as I shown through graphics, that a sine wave pattern, that is a spontaneous breathing. Then CPAP, I'll show it to you how to measure on through graphics. Then pressure support, your patient is on pressure support, how to look at pressure support, and then CPAP with pressure support. So all these things, they come under spontaneous breathing. And then about, this is a spontaneously breathing patient. Now the graphics which is coming in front of you is flow time, pressure time, and volume time. Now look at this graphic. A patient is breathing spontaneously. Flow time, there is a sine wave pattern, very similar. Because this patient is triggering, every breath is triggering, the negative deflection, here you have this negative deflection, is only seen on this graph, that is pressure time graph. So if this negative deflection is there on the pressure time graph, that means your patient is triggering and he can breathe on his own spontaneously. He needs little bit of support to your ventilator setting. Whatever is required, you have to decide. And in volume time, you can see this going like this amount of volume which is being delivered. So this is the scalar of spontaneous breathing. Now, the second important is CPAP and pressure support. Okay, here again we have three scalars, that is flow time, pressure time, and volume time. Now, this is the flow cycling. Patient is breathing on his own. You can look at this cycling, it's going like this. And these are pressure support. These are pressure support flow cycling. And when we look at the pressure time graph, again, there is a trigger. There is a trigger. This is the CPAP level. CPAP is the pressure which we kept or which we have set that stays continuously throughout the circuit, on the ventilator, on the circuit, and on the patient throughout the respirator. Helps to generate the patient. So it reflects the FRC. So if you are giving a good amount of PEEP, that means you are trying to generate the FRC of the patient. So CPAP, PEEP, all these represents how much FRC you are trying to generate on the patient. So this is the pressure support ventilation. And every time the patient is triggering, he is taking his own breath. And this is the volume time. So when a patient is on a CPAP and pressure support, then you can see this kind of graph which is coming on the ventilator. Now we go to volume targeted modes because most of you must be interested in these modes. One is controlled, another is assisted, SIMB plus pressure support, SIMB plus pressure support plus CPAP. Now you can see this does not require any assistance. This does not require any assistance. This always require an assistance with pressure support and CPAP. Without support, this mode is dangerous. Nowadays, all modern ventilators have been supplied with an SIMB plus pressure support plus CPAP. Because SIMB, although its name suggests synchronized intermittent mandatory ventilation, we understand that ventilator is synchronizing with the patient. No, it is not like that. It is actually the breath which has been set on the ventilator is at a synchronized interval. So, in that particular interval, if the patient triggers, the ventilator will assist. But if the patient triggers at some different times, the ventilator is not going to assist. I'll show you through graphics. I'll show you through graphics. Then the another, yeah, here you can see the okay. So as I said, there are control mode, assist control mode, SIMB plus pressure support, SIMB plus pressure support plus CPAP. Now here the first is the control mode. Control mode, whenever it is there, remember, it will not allow the patient to breathe in between. You have to take it very seriously because it never allows the patient to take this breathe in between. So if the patient breathes in a control mode, that is a real, a very bad, very, very hazardous to the patient because it will create a huge amount of lung injury. So always put a patient on control mode when the patient is relaxed and paralyzed. The patient is paralyzed, this is the mode which you actually need to put on, that is control mode. Here you can see again, it has been set as a time trigger because you set the time, that means 12 or 14 respiratory rate, then flow limited because you set the tidal volume. Volume cycle means after the set tidal volume, the ventilator is changing its cycle. So flow liters per minute, this is the flow time graph, this is the pressure time graph and volume time. Here you won't see any change as far as peaks are concerned. The peaks are same in all the graphics, and that is why it is called a control mode. That means the patient is fully under your control. He is fully relaxed, he is fully paralyzed, and he is fully on sedation. And that is why it is called a control mode. Okay. The next is assist control mode. In what happens in assist control, if the patient tries to trigger or if the patient is on sedation and tries to breathe, the ventilator will give or ventilator will assist. That is why it is called assist control mode. So in assist control mode, the patient is triggering. That is why it is called patient trigger. You can see the trigger, the patient has triggered. Flow limited because here you have fixed the volume. So flow is limited, 500 or 600, whatever tidal volume you are setting. And volume cycle, because it again goes to once the 500 ml of volume is delivered, it changes its cycle. So that is why assist mode in volume targeted ventilation. Here the patient is triggering, the most important, and the ventilator is giving his breath. Patient is triggering and the ventilator is giving his breath. It doesn't mean that the patient doesn't trigger, the ventilator will not give his breath. The ventilator will continue giving its own breath even if the patient is not triggering. So that is a very important. Then next we come to the SIMB. Now, as I said, SIMB, the patient, although it doesn't mean that ventilator is synchronized with the patient. And it always needs SIMB mode, always needs two assistants. One is pressure support and another is CPAP. Otherwise, it is a dangerous mode. Why it is dangerous? Look at this. You have set a volume. Here the ventilator is given his breath. Here the patient tries to breathe, but ventilator is not supporting. And what is happening? Again, a breath has come. But here you can see in this, because at this point of time, the patient and ventilator both are triggering at the same time. So that is why, because of this, the ventilator has given an additional breath, because both of them are synchronized at this point of time. But again, in these two breaths, the ventilator has, or the patient has failed to synchronize the ventilator, or the ventilator has failed to synchronize the patient. So these two are highly inadequate breath, and this will go on increasing, the patient will get exhausted. So that is why, and one always put a patient when on SIMB with the pressure support and CPAP. Here, this is the volume time graph, and you can see again, these two are highly inadequate breath as compared to these two breaths. So never give SIMB alone. Always put whenever an SIMB, This is a graph which shows how the SIMB compensates for these inadequate tidal volumes. Now, here in this graph, you see that pressure support has been added. This is the breathe which has been given by the ventilator. And look at this graph as compared to the previous graph. The pressure support, because it is a flow which is going on continuously, because at this point of time, the patient has triggered, so adequate amount of flow was generated by this pressure support. So pressure support, again, you have to decide how much pressure support is required to generate here the pressure support breath is given. This is the SIMB breath. So SIMB breath, pressure support, SIMB breath, again breath. So that is how it goes on. But again, if you add CPAP to this, it is a very, very good thing to do that. And nowadays, all the ventilators come without CPAP. You cannot, though you can always adjust the CPAP, but many ventilators have got a mode that you have to give some amount of CPAP. So here again, you see the same thing. This breath was given by pressure support. This is a flow time graph. And here again, here the patient is triggering. This is the CPAP level, which maintains the functional residual capacity of the lung. And over at that, this graph is getting formed. That is the SIMB breath. This is the pressure support breath. This is the SIMB breath. And here, every time the patient is triggering and the volume is being delivered, either through SIMB breath or through pressure support. Now we go to the pressure targeted. Now we talk about volume targeted, we talk about pressure targeted. Again, the modes are same. That is control mode, assisted mode, SIMB mode, SIMB plus pressure support, and then SIMB plus pressure support plus CPAP. So, two types, volume targeted, pressure targeted. Volume targeted, controlled, assisted, SIMB pressure support, CPAP. Here again, pressure targeted, the things are same, that is controlled, assisted, SIMB pressure support, and CPAP. Okay. Now, we see one by one in the form of graphics. What is happening here, you can see, this is the control mode. As I no change in the pressure, that means that the patient is cool and calm and completely relaxed. So whatever you are giving, your patient is accepting. Okay. Now we go to the second one, that is the assisted mode. What happens in assisted mode? As I said, here the patient triggers and the ventilator assists. If the patient in 60 minutes, or you can say 60 seconds, if the patient triggers 10 times, every time the ventilator will give a breath. If the patient triggers 15 times, every time the ventilator will give a breath. So it doesn't matter how many times the patient is triggering. So here again, that is why it is named as patient trigger. As soon as the patient triggers, gives a breath, pressure limited. Here you see the pressure is limited. Then time cycle, as you have set the time, that is the respiratory rate, whether you are setting it as a 12, whatever it is. So it is a time cycle. So patient trigger, pressure limited, time cycle ventilation. So in flow time, you see what you see. Here the patient is triggering, the ventilator is giving his breath. Patient is triggering, ventilator is giving his breath. So this is the beauty of assist controlled ventilation. Now we go to SIMB. As I said, SIMB is alone is not good for a spontaneously breathing patient because it increases the work of breathing tremendously. Why? Again, when you put a patient on a SIMB breathing pressure targeted mode, well, the same thing is happening when this is the synchronized SIMB breath. If the patient is triggering in between, the ventilator is not assisting, and this is harmful for the patient. And this is again an SIMB breath. Here you see again what was there in the previous graph. This ventilation, this breathing of the patient automatically got synchronized with the ventilator's breath. That's why this breath was completed. But this breath was not synchronized what the rate was set on the ventilator or when the ventilator was giving its breath. So that is why this was a highly inadequate breath. And again, the patient and ventilator breaths automatically got synchronized. So when it gets synchronized with the ventilator, it gives a complete breath. If it doesn't synchronize the ventilator, it will not give its breath. So that is why SIMB alone is bad. And again, that is why SIMB plus pressure support. Here again, combine SIMB along with pressure support, pressure targeted ventilation. Here, what is happening with the pressure support? Here, the amount of ventilation which exactly the patient requires when it's triggering, set amount of pressure support, and that is why this volume, a fair amount of volume is generated so that his standard volume requirement is get fulfilled. So this is what is pressure SIMB plus pressure support. And when you go to SIMB plus pressure support plus CPAP, again the same thing happens. Here, this is the CPAP level, and that tells about the functional residual capacity. As I said, amount of CPAP always tells about the FRC. So this is the set pressure control level. It is being assisted. One is a pressure SIMB breath, another is a pressure support breath, then again SIMB. So whenever the patient triggers, it is supported by the pressure support, sometimes by SIMB. Okay. Now, how this is all about modes I just now talked. Now, how do I start ventilating a patient? This is the big question. Now, every patient is different. Never think that every patient is same. And you're going to them. Every patient is different, and it is hard to know exactly what a patient will need in terms of ventilator support until they are actually on ventilator. Why? As I said, you cannot see lung kind of from outside. Unless you put a tube, you can see the lung parenchymal activity on the screen. So unless you get the ventilatory graphics, you won't be able to determine what exactly your patient needs. So that is why it is always when you put a patient on ventilator, then you come to know. So many of us have a preset ideas as to where to start the patient and then adjust the ventilator afterwards to achieve the desired ventilatory effect. And that is wrong. You never go through a preset ideas. This has a lot to do with the individual style of attending a patient. But what we'll do, if you have a preset idea and you put the patient on ventilator with your preset ideas, the patient may get huge amount of harm or loss because of your setting. So that is why you never go with the preset idea. You look at the patient, intubate the patient, put the patient on ventilator, look at the graphics. As per the requirement of the changes which is happening in the graphics, you set your ventilator. And which is the best mode? Just now I talked about so many modes. Which is the best mode? The best mode is that mode which you know very well. Every mode is good. All the modes, all the modern modes, dual modes have come recently. Now, I'm not talking about all those modes, but as far as basics are concerned, whether it is a pressure targeted, volume targeted, it is your choice on whichever mode you are maximally confident that is the best mode for your patient. Okay. Now, pressure versus volume. As I said, whether you choose a pressure targeted or volume targeted, I generally choose volume to start. Why? That is, I am more comfortable with volume. Now, why? Generally, a more straightforward in terms of meeting goals of ventilation. Okay. So this is my thought. Okay, fine. Many patients, sometimes I say no, pressure is good. Sometimes they say oh, the volume is good. But again, you have to decide on the bedside whether the volume is good for this patient or pressure is good for this patient. Now, which mode? Assist control mode, otherwise SIMB, with or without pressure support. Now, why? Assist control ventilation has the advantage of guaranteed tidal volume. As I said, whenever the patient triggers, it will deliver the ventilation. Now, it is also assists the patient efforts and reduces work of breathing. But as I said, SIMB alone is not good. SIMB will always require an assistance with pressure support and CPAP. So that is why Assist control is easy to set as compared to assigned pressure support. Now you want to keep a rate of 12 to 15. Why? Why want to keep a rate of 12 to 15? A good place to start, because normally we as human beings, this is our range on which we breathe. You can always adjust it later if the requirement is high or the requirement is low. The normal respiratory rate of an adult is 11. So as I said, you and me all are breathing in the same. So that is why this is a good rate. PEEP of 5. Why? A little bit of PEEP always helps to keep the alveoli open, because there are so many interfaces in between. A ventilator is there, an interface circuit is there, the endotracheal tube is there. So many resistance things are there. So you keep a PEEP of 5, that will take care of all the resistances and it will try to maintain a good opening of the lungs. Now, to start with, always remember, whenever you are starting a patient on ventilator, always keep the FiO2 at 100. Don't keep the FiO2. So before starting, always keep the FiO2 100. Then you can start to win once you are certain that everything is stable. You find that blood gases are okay. Then you start reducing the FiO2. Then see the amount of FiO2 which is required to maintain 90% of saturation. You never need 100% saturation. So if the patient is maintaining 90% saturation, that is enough. So whatever FiO2 is sufficient to maintain a 90% saturation is good. Now the tidal volume of 8 to 10 ml per kg. Why? 10 to 12 ml per kg used to be a standard range, but people are generally using PEEP to maintain lung volume and smaller tidal volumes to avoid barotrauma. So if you are adding PEEP, you can little bit reduce the tidal volume. So that is why 8 to 10 ml is the adequate tidal volume. But if your patient is having a stiff lung or ARDS, at that time, you can reduce the tidal volume to 6 ml per kg, and you can increase the PEEP up to 15 centimeter of water. That will try to generate the functional residual capacity, and it will be helpful for this patient. In the meantime, you can adjust always or play with your volume. You can reduce the volume to a better extent. Now, inspiratory time, somewhere between 0.5 to 1 second. That is what we exactly try to maintain, because that is what is physiology. We also breathe 1 second, 1:2. And that is what has been taught, and that is what we know. For a human being, 1:2 can always be adjusted. Again, if you see that your patient's need is a different, like ARDS patient, you can always reverse the ventilation to 1:1.5, 1:1, or like that. So, can always be adjusted once the pathophysiology is understood. And asthmatics, for example, there is very short time of respiratory time and maximum time for exhalation. So, what are the things to worry when you put a patient on your ventilator? The peak pressure, as I said, pressure is dangerous for the patient. So, peak pressure should not go beyond a certain extent. And the peak pressure which has been decided, that it is not harmful for the patient, is beyond up to 30 centimeter of water. So, under 35, wherever, you would like to keep this under 35 if all possible. If they start climbing into 40s or 50s, you should consider changing the pressure control. That means you need to change the pressure, reduce the pressure. Otherwise, atelectatic trauma or balloon pressure trauma will happen into the lungs. The implication is that patient either has a very restrictive lung disease and non-compliant lung, or a very severe obstructive lung pattern, in which case the pause pressure should be evaluated and attempts to improve bronchodilation should be increased. So that can help the patient by reducing the pressure. Oxygenation, that is again another thing to worry. Inability to wean the FiO2 should be a concern. Once on the ventilator, the goal should be to get an FiO2 of 60%. Less than 60%. Try to come to 40%. So as minimum oxygen as possible. Always remember that oxygen is toxic, but when it is toxic, when the patient's lungs are okay and you are giving an FiO2 which is giving a PO2 to a larger extent, is going beyond 150. It is not FiO2, it is PO2 which is dangerous. So partial pressure of oxygen, if it goes beyond 150, then it is always toxic. Because up to 100, That is the natural thing which we maintain. But by supplementing oxygen, you can go up to 150. Beyond that, it's toxic. But if the lungs are in an unhealthy condition, then you can always increase, go on a 5 to up to 100. If your CO2 remains at 60, no way, the oxygen is not helpful for that. So, if you are unable to do this, it implies either shunting. That means there is an intrapulmonary shunting, or there is a vascular shunting or intracardiac shunting, either from lack of airway or alveolar inflammation or disease. That means there is a high degree of VQ mismatch. That is why this thing is happening. Okay. Now ventilation again. Am I over or under ventilating this patient based on his needs? That is a very big question. Remember, a patient who is being intubated because of an upper airway problem may have an excellent respiratory drive and not need much of support. So in those cases, you just need to bypass the upper airway and put the patient as such, like tumors of the vocal cord, upper airway problem, stenosis. Then in that situation, you need to do a tracheostomy and leave the patient as such. While the patient is in shock with profound metabolic acidosis, may need a higher rate to help to compensate. Here, the demand supply mismatch. So that is why the patient's demand is high and you need to give higher amount of whatever support is needed. So here the patient is on ventilator and you can always control the demand with your ventilator. Obtaining a blood gas early after intubation within 15 to 20 minutes or being on the ventilator will help you to decide if you are moving in the right direction or not. As I said, after 20 minutes, you must do a blood gas and see in which direction you are going. Your oxygen is improving or not, your carbon dioxide is coming down or not, whether the pressures are staying within normal limit, if the pH has come to normal level or not. You can always get monitored through blood gas. So that is why blood gas is very important. So this is all about basics of mechanical ventilation. I can show you one ventilator is here. This is from Dagger company. And again, as I was talking about, here you can see this mode, volume control, that is control mode, CMV. Then assist control, as I said, here it is a volume control, assist control. It does not have get a pressure control. Then SIMB mode is also there. It is volume controlled SIMB. Here the pressure control mode, the Draeger company writes as a PC BiPAP. So when you put a patient on PC BiPAP, the changes which you need to do is the oxygen, as I said in the first, the inspiratory time, the respiratory rate. The most important thing is this one, peak inspiratory time here. Here you need to increase and you can go maximum up to 25 to 30. Not beyond that is going to be harmful. This is PEEP button. For a stiff lung or where there is an ARDS, you can go up to 15, 20 depending upon the need of the patient. And this is the pressure support button. As I said, that it is a big necessity when the patient is on an SIMB mode. So if the patient is on an SIMB mode, you can always use this pressure support. Like this, I'm putting the patient on a volume control SIMB. Here, all these things I need to set. Oxygen, you can set tidal volume, depending, as I said, 8 to 10 ml per kg. Inspiratory time, as I said, 1:2. So somewhere around 1. You can set a respiratory rate, whatever is the normal patient, 15 is okay. Then flow, as I said, it is the tidal volume divided by inspiratory time. As I said, it comes to around 40 to 50 liters when a patient is diseased. And when a patient is normal, it is around 25 to 30 liters. Here it can go up to, in this ventilator for bad disease, it can go up to 200. But here we'll try to set it for a minimal kind of lung disease. You can set it at around 70 or 60. And then P max, that is the barrier where exactly you need to set, but there's a volume control. This is just a safety guard that the pressure should not go beyond this. Otherwise, this button is not required in this. The PEEP, as I said, again depends upon the type of lung disease which the patient is having. and pressure support, because unless you give a pressure support, the SIMB is not going to function properly. Again, you can set a pressure support of 15, 20, 25, 30, depending upon the need of patient. And when you set the patient on an assist control, as I said, in assist control, every breath is supported by the ventilator. Again, you set the oxygen, tidal volume, inspiratory time, respiratory flow, P max and PEEP. Automatically, depending upon you set the respiratory rate at 15, and if the patient is taking 20 breaths, the extra 5 breaths will also be supported by the ventilator. But this does not happen in the SIME mode unless you add some pressure support with it. So this is how, and this is spontaneous, which I shown in the first part of my lecture. Here there is not much of setting, only thing is pressure support and PEEP. You need to set the pressure support, whether you want to give it at a 20 or 25, and PEEP whatever you feel, 5 or 10, depending upon your patient's need. This is the ideal setting. But if the patient is on a BiPAP or CPAP or COPD, you can keep it as lesser pressure, like 12 for pressure support or 6 of PEEP or something like that. Again, flow, you have to think, depending upon the tidal volume, by the inspiratory time ratio, you have to see how much is the patient's peak inspiratory flow. And once you decide the peak inspiratory flow, on spontaneous breath, you can always reduce it up to 40 or 50, whatever as the patient needs. So this is how the entire ventilator setting goes on. And then alarms, trends, and everything are there on the ventilator. But basically, how this is the way ventilator setting is controlled. But important thing is that checklist has to be there, whether it is the connections are proper, electrical connection, gas connection, oxygen supply, your compressor is working or not, humidifier is okay or not, your circuits has been connected properly or not, the HME filter is there or not, and ultimately all the connections are properly tightened or not, and you must assure that there is no leak on the circuit, and that's how you can assure that yes, your patient is going to get a good ventilatory support from your side. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, Pathak sir. Hello.
Thank you, Dr. Pradip Bhattacharya sir, for your detailed presentation. अब मैं चाहूंगा कि हमारे जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं, अगर किसी तरह की क्वेरी हो तो वी आर ओपन फॉर डिस्कशन. आप अपना माइक को अनम्यूट करके कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं तो पूछ सकते हैं, या फिर चैट बॉक्स में लिख के भी पूछ सकते हैं. देखिए, प्रेजेंट सिचुएशन इस तरह का है कि अभी सारे जिलों में आइसोलेशन वार्ड सेटअप किए गए हैं, वेंटिलेटर्स प्रोवाइड किए गए हैं, और ऐसा महसूस किया गया कि अभी केसेस अगर बढ़ेंगे या आ जाते हैं तो ये ऑपरेट आप लोग को करना पड़ेगा. इसी जरूरत को देखते हुए हम लोगों ने ये ट्रेनिंग ऑर्गेनाइज किया था. क्योंकि सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग की बात है, हम सभी को बुला करके नहीं कर सकते थे, तो इसको हम लोग ऑनलाइन सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग मेंटेन करते हुए हम लोग इसको प्रयास किए हैं करने का, ताकि जो लोग काम कर रहे हैं अभी आइसोलेशन वार्ड्स में या वेंटिलेटर पे जिनको काम करने की जरूरत पड़ेगी, उनको एक बार रिफ्रेश कर दिया जाए. और काफी खुशी की बात है कि लगभग 150 लोगों ने ज्वाइन किया इसमें. अगर किसी तरह का क्वेरी हो तो आप लोग पूछ सकते हैं, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली फील्ड में आप लोगों को काम करना है, परेशानी हो सकती है ऑपरेट करने में. हमारे साथ एक्सपर्ट डॉक्टर भट्टाचार्य है, वो आपके क्वेरीज का जवाब दे पाएंगे. तो अभी जो पूछना हो पूछ सकते हैं. डॉक्टर वनेश,
एक क्वेश्चन है डॉक्टर जीवी चंद्रा का. There is a in case of ARDS, PEEP should be less than 5 or more than 5.
No. In case of AR,
हाँ सर, please.
In case of ARDS, as I said, the lungs become very stiff and it behaves like a baby lung. At that point of time, uh, the nature of the lung is just like a cemented structure. And unless you give a very high amount of PEEP, the functional residual capacity of the lung is not going to get retained. So to retain a good functional residual capacity, you need to increase the PEEP not less than 10. 10 is the optimal amount of PEEP which is required, and above 10, depending upon your experience, how experienced you are in managing ARDS patient, you can go on increasing up to 30, 35, 40. It depends totally on the operator and the person who is on the backside of the ventilator and his experience. We have used a PEEP up to 40 centimeter of water. So that is why it is your experience which counts, but the minimum amount which is required is 10 centimeters. Okay. In Corona, I hope you are asking us in relation to Corona. I tell you that in coronavirus infection, most of the patients are developing symptoms like acute respiratory distress syndrome. But here, the study which has been done and recently published by in the journal New England Journal of Medicine by Gattinoni, what he said, although the lung behave like an ARDS lung, but basically the problem remains with perfusion. The lung alveoli, the compliance of the lung alveoli, it does not change much, but the blood supply of the lung inside the lung gets a good amount of change at different levels. And why it happens, it is yet to be determined, but people think that in this viral disease, what is happening, the blood supply of the lung is getting obstructed at different level by microthrombi. So that is why there is a perfusion defect instead of ventilation. But I say that yes, your strategy should be to give the patient a strategy which we follow in ARDS. Initially, as early as possible, you prone your patient as soon as the patient comes to your ICU. Even if the patient is on oxygen mask, you can keep the patient on prone if he is comfortable. It will always improve the oxygenation. Then if it suffices, all right. If the patient is intubated, again, you can keep the patient in prone position for another 24 to 48 hours, or you can use that 16 hours interval, 16 hours prone and then 8 hours in supine position. In the meantime, you also have to look for perfusion. Perfusion means you have to use some drugs which works like inodilators. Here in this coronavirus infection, it has been observed that most of these patients develop hypotension along with ARDS. That is a typical finding. And to take care of that hypotension, you need to use inodilators. And the drugs which has been recommended is either milrinone or dobutamine. That increases the cardiac output and also it takes care of the lung perfusion. So this is how the strategies which are being decided for corona infection.
So you said that it is not FiO2 which is to be taken care of, it is the PO2.
Yes.
How we will get idea of PO2 without ABG monitoring?
No, yeah, that is why I said you must have an PO2. You, if you have a ventilator, you must have an ABG machine. If you do not have an ABG machine, as I said, you are not doing proper justice with your patient. So that is why whenever you are ventilating a patient, you have to monitor the ABG and then only you can say that your patient is getting adequate ventilation. So PO2 is very important.
if you have any more questions, maybe type in the chat box. Dr. Pathak sir, I don't see any more questions coming around.
Dr. Vanesh,
Yes, sir.
are there any more questions?
No, no, that's what I'm saying, sir. I don't see any you can close the meeting.
The audio is breaking. So, thank you everybody. And thank you, sir, for such detailed presentations. सभी लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट है कि वो जो लिंक प्रोवाइड किया गया है उसमें अपना ईमेल आईडी जरूर डाल दें ताकि ये प्रेजेंटेशन एंड रिकॉर्डिंग आपको सेंड किया जा सके फ्यूचर रेफरेंस के लिए. So thank you. We'll end the meeting now. Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.